I was wondering along the lines of Plutus and for the up and coming software developers out there and the software developers that are coming over to Cardano from other blockchain projects, like what resources are available? The most recent one I've seen was from Lars Brunez and Polina Vinogradova. They wrote a book, the Plutus ebook.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's an ebook available, and in one of your previous videos, you spoke of mock chain. I can't remember exactly how it worked out, but there's something like a mock chain for developers to practice on. Is that how that works?
Yeah. Let me talk through what the various resources are. So yeah. So the key thing is, where Plutus and Marlow are being developed to be deployed on the Cardano blockchain, and the plan is to have that done certainly within the next year. In the meantime, what we have is a simulation of what the blockchain is like, and Plutus and Marlow run on that. But in terms of people using Plutus and Marlow now, what we have are what are called the Plutus Playground and the Marlow Playground. So those are web-based resources where you can develop Plutus contracts, you can develop Marlow contracts, and then you can interact with them, you can simulate them, so you can get an understanding of how your contract behaves without running it without deploying it and running it. And we see that, I mean, that means that people can get started with using Plutus and Marlow now, but it's something we expect people will do even when Plutus and Marlow are deployed. You want to play around, you want to validate this contract that you've written. What you can do is run it in the playground and get a good sense of how it behaves before you start putting it out for live use. Because of course, once it's running, you can't stop it. It's once you've written your Marlow contract and it's deployed to the blockchain, it will run its course. And if it doesn't do what you wanted it to do, then that's unfortunate. But that's life. You've signed the contract. You can't change it when it's running. I mean, maybe you could in the real world, but you can't on the blockchain world. Once it's running, full stop. So providing people with that sort of facility is something that's very important. Now, what we're doing is we're in the process of doing some revisions for Marlow. And if you look on our main resources are on the GitHub, the IOHK GitHub, we have Marlow 1.3, which was our original version of Marlow. And what we're doing is for the Wyoming Financial Hackathon, which is in mid-September, we'll be releasing an integrated version of Marlow where we have the Marlow Playground and the code and a tutorial all together in one place. Where we are at the moment is we have separately the Marlow Playground, which we used to call Meadow, and a tutorial on GitHub. We're moving towards, in the next few weeks, having those all in an integrated format. Now, one of the advantages of Marlow being a domain-specific language, and this was something else I was going to come back to, but now's a good place to do it, is that when you write in a domain-specific language, because your programs can't cover everything. They're just in this well-delimited area. You can do more with them. You can, by reading a program, you can look at any point and say, oh, I know what inputs it's going to take at this point. So it means that you can simulate the program in a much more high fidelity way than you would simulate a general purpose Plutus program. So somebody can get a very good idea that at this point in the contract, they're only going to be offered this option or this option, for example. It's much easier to read the program and simulate it on the basis of that. So that's another advantage of the DSL. Because we've restricted what it can do, it's easier to understand how those programs behave. And it also means that we can write programs to analyze contracts. So we can check that whatever you do, however somebody interacts with this contract, it's not going to produce a failed payment, for example. And that's the sort of analysis you'd like to know before you deploy your contract in practice. So being able to do that sort of analysis is something else that we'll be putting into, or we'll be integrating with the Marlow Playground. So it will allow you to have that sort of reassurance when you write your contract.
Okay.
Now, just one other thing, there's a Udemy course about Marlowe, and there's a Udemy course about Plutus, and those are in the process of being updated. But if you want to find out about the principles underlying Marlowe and so on, that's a good place to go. So Udemy has those courses, and quite a lot of people have done those already. We'll be updating those with the team with Neve and Alejandro, who helped us make those. Again, we're doing that over the next few weeks. So there's a lot of work going on, just pulling together some changes we wanted to make and integrating everything into this, into the Marlowe and Plutus playgrounds. So that's and with a view to having all this ready for mid-September. But certainly the resources are out there. And as you said at the beginning, there's now the ebook. And the nice thing about an ebook and about online tutorials, we can keep those up to date as Plutus and Marlowe evolve. So there'll be a resource that will always be up to date with the current version. But that ebook is there; it's freely available. So if you can buy it on Amazon, but you can also get it through other sources. And I guess we can put a link up to that on the podcast.